Thank you. Please be seated. We are going to get right at it because tonight we're going to have also the governor's debate, and so we are going at this, and candidates have been informed. The format for tonight will be just quick succession questions. We don't have opening remarks, we don't have closing remarks, we're just getting right to the questions. We have a timekeeper right here, Spencer. You have to stop eating now, I'm sorry. Spencer will be our timekeeper. Each candidate was allowed to draw lots to see who was first. The Nelson campaign won, and they chose to go first. And so the candidate will receive 4 minutes to answer that question in any way they choose. And then we will proceed to the second question, or the other candidate, and then the second question. And they can use that time maybe even to follow up from the previous. There's no rebuttal, but if they want to use the 4 minutes, ignore the question I just asked and use it to rebut, that's just fine. And so here we go. Few topics in our nation create more passionate discussion than immigration. Describe to us your plan for immigration reform. Senator Nelson?
Well, first, let's see, do we have a mic on here?
Nope.
Now, don't start my 4 minutes yet. All right. Do we have the mics on here? Let's try again. We have one live mic that I'm sure we can share. Well, State Senator Carla Nelson, first, it's great to be here with you, and it's exciting to see all of the enthusiasm in this room. We want that to continue all the way through to November so we actually can capture this seat this time. Immigration is a top issue for us. And let's know that national security does begin at home. It begins with backing the blue. Those are our police officers, and it requires that we have border security. A country without secure borders is not safe, nor sustainable, nor sovereign. A country with porous borders is at great risk. I believe the very first thing we must do regarding immigration is border security. We must have secure borders before we look at any other of our broken immigration policies. I have to wonder if the last 8 years of the prior administration's broken immigration system perhaps was favored by those who wanted and were seeking open borders. Our country cannot long sustain if we do not have secure borders. That means that it could be a variety of things. I support stronger border patrol. I support a wall, especially in those places where border patrol says it will be the most effective. There are new and innovative ways to secure our border as well. Things like drones. There can be sticky traps, all kinds of different things. However, it's essential that we look at all the tools in the toolbox to make sure that our borders are secure. I believe that Minnesotans and Americans deserve that. We expect that of our leaders. And just like I have stood firm for our law enforcement, our National Guard in the state of Minnesota, I will stand firm in Congress as your Congresswoman to support safe, secure borders, again, and to back the blue.
I'm Jim Hagedorn, Republican here for Congress, and it's a pleasure to be with you. I want to stand up just so I can see everyone as we talk. Thank you for taking the time to be here. Thanks to Will in Blue Earth County and Carol. Appreciate you moderating and all that you do for the party. You know, there's lots of issues on the table. I just want to give you a quick heads up about our campaign. We're rolling. Things are going great. You know, at that last campaign, we were in this building, 2016 on election night. And it was late in the night when we left, and we came very, very close. but it wasn't meant to be, and we kept at it, and we'll talk a little bit about that later and how we persevered. The campaign's going great. Now, securing America's borders. I'll tell you what, both teams in Washington have failed at this one. After 9/11, that was the best excuse or reason we had to secure our borders and start protecting our country in that way and revise our immigration system, get back to the rule of law, and we didn't get it done. And a lot of that's on our party. I'm not one of these that just blames the other team when they make mistakes. And I'm really proud that we have a president who's made this a focus of his administration, who's trying to turn things around. Yes, border security, the wall, it's very important, all of the above. But you know what I don't understand? How 17 years after 9/11, the passport and visa system in this country is still messed up. We don't know who's leaving our country. We don't know when people overstay their visas. And some of the people on 9/11 caused some of those problems by being out of compliance with their visas. It needs to be biometric. We need to do that. And then when you get into other issues in border security, hey, look, I'm a Republican, but I also talk to people out there across the communities, people in farming and agriculture. We need a viable work program for people to fill actual jobs. They can come and go, maybe they can build up credits as citizens. But that's being held hostage because the Democrats want 15 million or whatever citizens to vote. The Republicans want border security. I'm all for that though. Merit-based immigration has to happen. This chain migration needs to go away. This idea because you know somebody you can get in and we're not vetting them and making sure that doesn't work. We need folks that are going to come to the United States, assimilate, contribute to our economy as best as possible. Those that don't really shouldn't remain in the United States. People always say, the Democrats do. Hey, we're a nation of immigrants. That's true. People in my family came from Germany many years ago, almost 150 years ago. But you know, a lot of people came here, it didn't work, they went back. And we didn't have a welfare system that allows people to stay and not assimilate. So we need folks that will do that. I would move into the area also of Islamic terrorism when it comes to our borders and national security. Am I out of time, Spencer? All right, okay, thank you. And you know, the last administration, open borders, it flooded this country with many people, refugees from countries that hated America. We have a problem in that area, assimilation, terrorism, and welfare. In 2015, I called for a refugee settlement timeout. It was the first in the nation, even before President Trump waded into the issue. And you know, that's the right thing to do. We want people to come here, but we want them to assimilate. My competitor had a little different view. She thought that the best way to handle that issue wasn't to have a timeout, but to give the Somali community $18 million in your taxpayer dollars. And I don't think that's the right way to go. That's just going to invite more problems. We need to get a handle on this and move forward. So with that, that's my answer on immigration. Thank you.
Our second question, and we'll begin with Mr. Hagedorn. This district values its agricultural roots and its rural values. Yet we see our small communities struggling economically and our population decreasing. What is your plan for agriculture and rural development?
Yeah, this is one of the 4 planks in why I'm running for Congress, is to sustain agriculture and our rural way of life. And you know, our communities are under pressure. I was born in Bloor, where I live today. Grew up on a grain and livestock farm just outside of Truman. Many of my Truman friends are here today. My father, grandfather, great-grandfather, all southern Minnesota farmers. In our little town, our community of Truman, there's my mother, stepdad, and sister right there. Remember those days. You know, it used to be a vibrant little community, but there are fewer farmers needed to work the land now, and it's tougher to have people stay in our communities. They're under pressure. And these last 4 or 5 years, since the middle of the Obama administration, farmers and agriculture, many agribusinesses have effectively been in recession. Low commodity prices, high input costs. And some of that is because of bad government. So first and foremost, I want to go to Washington and be on the Ag Committee, serve on that committee, and do everything possible for our farmers in our rural communities. But part of that is just what we have to do to reform the economy and make these changes that Republicans and President Trump and I ran on in the last election. We need to get rid of bad government in Washington that's hurting our farmers. This regulatory policy, like things like Waters of the United States that the Democrats were for in the last election, that put a bullseye on agriculture. That would have been a disaster, giving the federal government power over our land, over our farmers. We got to have regulatory reform. The House and the Senate should affirm regulations that the executive agency writes, especially the EPA. Then we need to do things like get rid of this Obamacare. That's crushing farmers. It's like the biggest issue in agriculture, because when farmers are breaking even and losing money, you know, taking $30,000 or $40,000 out of their pockets for insurance with a deductible so high the insurance is worthless, that's terrible. Then you get into energy policy. You know, half the price of a bushel of corn almost is energy costs. Electricity costs, very important for livestock and others. The last administration, folks, had a war against agriculture. Nobody wanted to talk about it, but that was the truth. From the tax policies like the death tax, to the regulations, to the energy policies, on it goes. And so those are the types of things we need to do at the federal level to help sustain and support our farmers. Now, I gotta tell you that there's some people running in this office, running for office against us on the other team, the Democrats. And they're running even further to the left than Tim Walz on most all these issues. One of the guys running went through the parade saying, act on climate change. You know, for a farmer, that means you're gonna quit today or you're gonna quit tomorrow. That's where we are on that. That's how radical they are. But if we continue along this path and do everything we can to reform the government, reform the economy, help our farmers and agriculture, it'll have a profound effect on our rural communities. And this is a national security issue. Where would we be in our country if we had to import our food the way we import our oil and other products? We'd be relying on countries that were not reliable, countries that would give us less quality and higher prices. So for that, I will be a strong proponent, and I will do my best to serve on the agriculture and support you every day.
Well, thank you for the question on ag. Now, before I get to that, I want to address some inaccuracies or maybe give you a little bit more context. On the immigration question, Jim talked about $18 million for Somalis. What does that mean? Let's put some context to that. The author of the bill was Senator Abler, I think. Yes, Senator Abler. There's room for four other co-authors on the bill. I was the last co-author on that bill. But let me tell you about that. Do you think bills actually get passed like they're introduced? Never. Because that's what happens. It goes through the committee process, it gets refined, and it comes out the other end. But let me tell you about what the intent was on this bill. This bill was to help people who are here legally get off of welfare and into work. It was an economic development bill. The author of the bill, who chaired the committee, his intention was he had to reduce health and human services spending. It's growing at an astronomical rate. And you have to ask yourself, people who are already here legally, do you want them to stay on the public dime with welfare? Or do you want them to have those tools to go out and be productive members of society? And in fact, we need to make sure that any of our, these could be refugees who come to our country, to our shores. Our responsibility is to make sure that it's their responsibility to make sure that they are productive. They need to be productive citizens. And yes, they do need to acclimate to our culture. When my grandfather came here from Norway at the turn of the last century, he couldn't even come into this country unless he had a sponsor who would help him. In other words, the government was not going to do that. Well, we don't live in that world anymore, but we do have people coming to our shores, and it is our job, just like President Trump has talked about, which is get the tools out there, help them get those skills so they can be productive members of our society and not be on the public dime. The fiscal note for the bill in question actually showed that over time it would actually save costs. And that was the intention. But let's talk about the amount. 18 million was too much. The chair of the committee who authored the bill knew in his mind, because he controlled the budget, it would be less than $250,000. So not a lot, but the point is give them the skills that they need to get off the welfare. That was the point. I do have a strong voting record, but let's talk about ag. I come from a long history. My roots are deep in the ag community. Both my parents came from farms. My mother's farm is a family farm, still in the family. My dad was a sharecropper, and of course that farm didn't follow with the family, but as soon as he could, he bought a farm. Now, all the good things that you've heard about ag and what needs to be done, I've already done in the state legislature. I have rolled back regulations on our ag producers. I have stood up to the governor on his overreaching buffer strips. I called him out when his people were increasing fines dramatically on that. I have stood up for, fought for, and achieved a state tax conformity, a greater conformity, so that our farmers could pass their farms on more easily to the next generation. I supported the Young Farmers Act. I supported agriculture innovations, helping to get Palmer Amaranth out of our farmers' fields. I support getting the government off our farms, out of our pocketbooks, and I have a long history of not just talking about it, but of voting to do those things.
Thank you. And we will exercise decorum here, please. No heckling. Thank you. Question number 3, we'll start with you, Senator Nelson. If elected to Congress, you will take an oath where you will solemnly swear to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Describe to us what an ideal national security policy looks like.
Thank you. You know, that is the job number 1 of government, is to keep its people safe. We talked about safe and secure borders, backing the blue. We need to have strong national defense, and we need to have smart foreign policy. Of course, that begins with peace through strength. Certainly, we need to have better relationships than what our last president left us with. I'm gravely concerned about the poor Iran deal and how that has empowered that country in its nuclear proliferation and what that can do to us. I'm concerned about our national security. But we have to be concerned about North Korea as well. Over there we have a regime that is unstable, I would say murderers. We have to be careful. Now, to that point, I have to tip my hat to the president, who for the first time that we can remember has the North Koreans and the South Koreans speaking together. I think that's a step in the right direction. Thank you. And I always believe, you know, but trust but verify. So let's not let down our guard. Let's be very clearly about that. Certainly, over in Syria, we cannot have a madman like Assad murdering people with chemical weapons. I applaud the president for attacking those chemical weapon dumps. And quite frankly, those are the type of hard lines that need to be taken. Russia is one of our largest geopolitical foes. Let us not forget for one moment. We would be in much better shape if President Obama and Hillary Clinton had not spent the last 8 years playing patty cake with this regime. And so, yes, we have a lot of issues in front of us, a lot of hot spots, many of them left over from the previous administration. But I applaud the fact that our country now is putting a line in the sand, standing strong, and standing against dictators and murderers like Assad. So I believe peace through strength, and that means you have to be vigilant, and you need leadership that is willing to make those hard calls. We have a lot at stake. We have a lot at stake. I still believe we are the greatest country on earth. We are the shining city on the hill. And if we want to protect that and our way of life, we need leaders who are called to serve, who have a higher calling, and who will stand for our rights, and who will protect democracy. We must stand firm with Israel. It is our greatest ally in the Mideast. It is one of our greatest allies in the world. just happens that you might notice that Israel's 70th birthday was just 2 days ago. And it has had a significant tough road. But we know that Israel is strong, and we will be stronger when we continue to defend Israel. So there are many hot spots in the world. What does that tell you? We need leaders that are strong. We need leaders that are real, and leaders who have America's best interest first.
Well, I was fortunate enough as a pretty young kid to work on Capitol Hill during the Reagan Revolution for a congressman named Stanglin from the northwest part of Minnesota. Arlen was a good conservative, and I saw firsthand President Reagan and his Peace Through Strength administration and everything he did to rebuild our defenses. And the thing I admired the most about President Reagan is the way he stood up to our adversaries. He stood by our allies, and people always knew where he was coming from. He was a very successful guy. Part of that was taking on the communist expansion around the world, whether that was in Angola or Mozambique or in Central America. And he stood tall, and he showed you that sometimes you have to be a little tough in order to, in that case, win the Cold War. That was probably the greatest achievement in the last 50 or 60 years of our country, for sure. Winning the Cold War and getting us to where we are. Do I want a strong military? Yes. Is our military in trouble? Yes. Do we need to build and remodernize? Absolutely. But the bill that the Congress and the President passed about a month ago to fund the government with $1.3 trillion, much of it borrowed money, was the wrong way to go. The Pentagon, every agency of government should be reformed. That was kind of my background when I was on Capitol Hill in another capacity. And the Pentagon is the first place we need to go in and save tens of billions of dollars and take that money and apply it to modernizing our weapons systems and giving better pay and benefits to our troops. We have to get back to some fiscal discipline in Washington because that's a threat to our country as well. Now, part of this you have to talk about our foreign policy. And I have to say, President Trump was dealt a very bad hand by President Obama. President Obama, for whatever reason, decided he was going to go into the Middle East and other places and undermine U.S. allies and neutral actors. People like Mubarak in Egypt, Gaddafi in Libya. And even when you look at Iraq, what he did there, leaving, pulling the troops out without a status of forces agreement to keep the peace. The whole place was on fire, refugee problems, Islamic terrorism and supremacy in the eye that you can see. Everywhere there's a problem. You know, I think the senator and I just have a little bit of difference of an opinion when it comes to this whole Islamic supremacy thing. We do want people to come to our country lawfully and legally. We want them to assimilate. But we don't want people who are going to come here with ideologies that are in conflict with Western culture and our Constitution. And there are people in our country today that have those attitudes, and we've had problems with that, and so it's a serious threat. Before we bring people into the United States as refugees, we spend $20,000 per refugee. It's a fair question. Is that really in the best interest? Or should we build safe zones around the world so we can keep them there and repatriate them in our home country? Secondly, we also spend on average about $107,000 when they come into the country on various benefits. And when someone says, what's the best way to get somebody off of welfare? I don't think it's to give them more welfare. I'll be honest with that. And so I think, frankly, we invite more problems, and we need to take a different approach than throwing money at it. That would be my suggestion.
Question number 4. We'll begin with Mr. Hagedorn.
Excuse me, how many questions are there? I never heard. Five.
Yes, there are 5 questions. The national debt now exceeds $21 trillion. What is your solution to this ever-growing problem?
Well, we just talked a little bit about that. No more of these big omnibus spending bills to fund the government. So, we have to get back to regular order. And the House of Representatives under Republicans in this last term has done a pretty good job. They passed all 12 appropriations bills and sent them to the Senate. Unfortunately, none of them passed the Senate and made it to the President's desk. So then at the end of the year, or when we try to fund the government for the fiscal year, there's this big group of spending and everybody threatens to shut the government down. And so I would say this, if the Senate can't get those appropriations, those spending bills through under regular order with 60 votes, they need to change their rules over there and get to a simple majority for spending, the same way that they did with the Supreme Court. If we do that, we pass the bills, we give them to the president for either signature or veto, you go through the regular process, the Democrats are going to be in a tough position to threaten all these things about how the world's going to come to an end and nobody's going to get their Social Security checks and everything else. So that's one. Second thing is, when I was out there, I have some experience reforming government. And every agency does need to be reformed, and again, starting with the Pentagon. But one of the things that I did, I worked for the Treasury agency that dispersed payments, Social Security payments, veterans payments, things like that. And I went to my boss, I said, we're making $1 trillion payments or whatever it is, and you know, half of them are by check and half of them are by electronics. What are we doing here? He says, well, you know, we could do them all electronic, but we'd have to get a bill passed. I said, let's do it. He said, Hagedorn, if you can do that, all the more power to you. Well, a few years later, we passed something called the EFT 99 Act. We closed 4 check writing centers. We eliminated 5% of my Treasury agency's workforce. We improved service to taxpayers and saved about $2 billion. I think that's what you're looking for out in Washington, is people who will use their positions of responsibility to downsize their own federal agencies and to make government more efficient. Fiscal discipline in the world, and I was the first person, I think, in America in the Republican Party who was hammering the Republican Party when George W. Bush was president. We never should have doubled the federal debt from $5 to $10 trillion. That was unconscionable. It's the reason we lost, by and large, we lost our majorities. But what Obama and the Democrats did after that was horrible, and unfortunately, I don't see a lot of changes. Do we need changes in things like entitlements? Yes. Do we need to make some interesting ideas out there so we don't try to get branded as the worst people in the world for trying to change these programs and save money? Yes. One of the ideas I had long ago, and I would take it to Washington, is that you would offer up a person when they become 65 years old, whatever it is, to buy them out. You know, the guy that took Home Depot public a few years ago was CNBC. He was on TV, I think his name's Larry Langone, something like that. And he said, you know, the reason I collect Social Security, and he's worth $500 million or whatever, he says, I figure I'll spend it better than the government. But if he knew that he could cash out and then we could save whatever we would save for his years that he would live, maybe he'd give it back or put it in escrow and give it to his kids, whatever we do. We have to do things like that. Also, we should look at funding Social Security for people when they're born, not when they're of age, when the government squandered all the money. Start these accounts when people are 1 day old, because the money will grow if you invest it over the first 18 years instead of starting when you're 1. It's going to grow exponentially. You're going to have more there. People will be in a much better position to hold their own wealth and to have more of it when they retire.
Well, that was a bit of a rambling question. What was the question that you were seeking an answer to? Hold my time.
Certainly, I'm happy to repeat that. The national debt now exceeds $21 trillion. What is your solution to this ever-growing problem?
Thank you. Oh, that is an ever-growing problem in every sense of the word. I support a balanced budget amendment. Just like we have in the state of Minnesota, we have to balance our budget. Our Constitution requires that. Now, sometimes those are hard decisions, let me tell you. And you're going to see how hard those decisions are in the next few weeks. Although this is not a budget year. I keep reminding everyone who wants to spend more money, this is not a budget year. But every 2 years we have a budget year, and it's a big fight about how much money are we going to spend? How are we going to spend it? Is this the rightful role of government? And so I think Washington could learn a lot from Minnesota. I do support a balanced budget amendment. That would help immensely. We cannot continue to crank out money, so to speak, or encourage debt. Our grandchildren, my grandchild hasn't even been born yet. But you know what? He or she has got a world of debt on them from previous generations of overspending. Now, some people can talk about that, and you've heard a lot of talk tonight, and during the campaign, you're going to hear a lot of talk. And people can say anything. But you know what? I have a voting record. I have an extensive voting record of standing up for the taxpayer, delivering $600 million of tax cuts, standing against $2 billion of tax increases, supporting increased estate tax exemption, supporting Section 179 full conformity. You want to talk about helping your farmers and your small businesses? That's one way to do it. Let them expense that equipment out. Mr. Quist would understand that for sure. Many of you would here. Those are the type of things that I have not only talked about, but supported, advanced, and accomplished in the Minnesota Senate. Now, you never get all the things you want at the same time. Nice to talk about that, but it doesn't always happen that way. So we got some greater Section 179 expensing, and we got some greater estate tax conformity. I believe that first, having a balanced budget amendment. Secondly, we need to elect people to Washington, D.C. who are not from Washington, D.C. We don't need to import people from Washington, D.C. to come in here into the 1st Congressional District and try to represent us. We need people who have actually lived here in the 1st Congressional District, people who have raised a family here, had to run a business here, started a small business here, been involved in our civic and our nonprofits and our churches throughout the 1st District. So we need to send people to Washington, D.C. who are not only one of us, people who represent our values, but people who are prepared. People who know what it's like to lead. People who know what it's like to balance a budget. And quite frankly, I'd like to see more small business owners and any business owners in any elected government. People like me who've had to sign the front of a check, not just the back of a check. Those type of people are the folks that we need in Washington, D.C., and then we need a balanced budget amendment to hold them accountable. Not only is it the right thing to do, it's the moral thing to do, and our future depends on it. Your grandchildren's future depends on it, and my unborn grandchild's future depends on it.
Our fifth and final question, we begin with you, Senator Nelson. How are you and your campaign best positioned to win in November?
Oh, that is such a great question because that's just what I wanted to talk about. We are best positioned to win in November for a lot of reasons. One, we have the best candidate. I'm the only candidate that has a proven track record of standing up for our Second Amendment rights, voting for concealed carry, voting for the Castle Doctrine, earning an A rating from the NRA. I'm the only candidate in this race who has a proven record of standing up for pro-life. In fact, the nation's premier pro-life group, the Susan B. Anthony Group, has already endorsed this race. They often don't get involved until after the primary, but they know, as so many Minnesotans know, as so many Americans know, the stakes are too high, folks. The stakes are too high for us not to have our strongest candidate on the ballot. In fact, the very majority of the U.S. House of Representatives could be at risk, and we know what that first vote would be. In fact, they've already teed it up. They're going to impeach the president. That would be their first vote. Folks, we cannot afford to have a perennial loser come out of the primary and try and represent us on the November ballot. This district was won by President Trump by 15 points. That is not a red wave, that is a red tidal wave. Now over in where the district where I'm from, Olmsted County, that was the only district in the state, or the only district in the 1st Congressional District, the only county that didn't vote for President Trump. It voted for Hillary Clinton. But yet, over there, in that harder part of the 1st District, not only did I win, I beat the Democrat by 12 points, and I outperformed our president by 10 points. So I know that a lot of you have been friends here with Mr. Hagedorn. Jim has run hard races. He ran in 2010. He ran in 2012. Excuse me, Mr. Quist ran in 2012. He ran in 2014, and he ran in 2016. And it'd be quite easy for me to stay in the Minnesota Senate where I have a 4-year term. I'm a senior member, I have a gavel, but I'll tell you what, I can't do that. I cannot do that because the stakes are too high. I believe in our country. I know that we are at great risk if we do not win this congressional seat. I have outraised my opponent 2-1 in my first quarter that I was in the race. My second quarter report just came out. It was a March report. And again, we have more money on hand for the primary election than Mr. Hagedorn does. And he has been running for 16 months. I have been running for 7. We have the money, we have the candidate, we have the endorsements behind us that are going to carry us across the line. I ask for your support because the stakes are too high not to have our strongest candidate in November.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for everybody for attending, and I'm looking forward to the governor's debate after this. Carol, thank you for moderating. You know, we were, like I said, we were here on election night 2016. It was a tough loss, 49.6% of the vote. If 61 votes in each of the 21 counties flip from Tim to Jim, we win. That's how close it was. And I got to tell you, I woke up the next day a happy person. I wanted to beat Tim Walz. We all did. We worked very hard. Because of you, we got close. We had great staff and all our volunteers. We're close. But I woke up a happy person for a fairly simple reason. Because our race for Congress, my race, my election, it wasn't the most important one on the ballot. The most important one on the ballot was for President of the United States, Donald J. Trump. And had we lost that election, we would have lost the country. The Supreme Court hung in the balance. Scalia's appointment alone would have made a difference. Could have turned us into California if it went the wrong way. We would have been back to the Obama policies, and who knows where we would have ended up. When they asked me about that before the election, do you support Donald Trump for president? I was quoted in the paper of record over in Rochester, and I said, absolutely, because if he loses, we lose the country. And I encouraged everyone to vote for him. Because his election was more important, the country was more important than me, you are more important than me. My opponent didn't do the same thing. She said she couldn't even vote for him, or at least she couldn't commit to it. I don't think that's the type of leadership we need in Washington, D.C. I think it's time we don't send people out there anymore, like these John McCain types, who tell us they're Republicans and all, and then when the crunch time comes down, they're just not there for us. Folks, when it was on the line, when it could have been the easiest thing for me to do because everybody thought it would have been wrong to hang with Trump. There's no way. I'll fight for you every day. This is about us. This is about our victory. This is the time, it's the third time in 100 years we've had the House, the Senate, and the White House in Washington, the Republican Party. This is the third time in our lifetime, so we had a chance to make real conservative change. We did it under Reagan, we did it under Gingrich, and now we have to do it under Trump. If we make these changes in these next 2 years and have people like me who can hit the ground running and be part of that caucus on day one and do everything we can for our conservative movement, we can give this country another 20 or 30 years of life, just like Reagan and the Republicans did. This is the most important and consequential election of our lifetimes in this district. Let's get it done. I ask for your support and your endorsement. Thank you.